In April of 2018, on an ordinary street in Chicago, a young engineering student stepped outside his apartment building and began walking down the sidewalk. It was the kind of morning that felt completely normal. Cars passed by, people hurried to work. Nothing about the scene looked unusual. The student carried a backpack over one shoulder. His headphones were in his ears. To anyone watching, he looked like just another college kid heading out for the day. But someone was watching him. Parked nearby was a red car. Inside the car sat a man who had been waiting. The moment the student appeared, the man stepped out and walked toward him. Then he said something strange. "Your friend from Nanjing is in trouble." The words seemed to stop time. The student froze. Within minutes, the two of them were heading toward a hotel room in downtown Chicago. But what the student didn't know was that hidden microphones were recording every word he was about to say. Outside the hotel room, federal agents were already in position. Because the young engineering student walking into that room was not just a student. According to the United States government, he was secretly working for one of the most powerful intelligence agencies in the world. His name was Chaoqun. And the strange part of this story is that he didn't look like a spy at all. Friends described him as goofy, friendly, sometimes awkward. One person even joked that he reminded them more of Mr. Bean than James Bond, which raises an unsettling question. How does someone like that become part of an international espionage operation? And how did this cheerful engineering student end up caught between two global superpowers? To understand that, we have to go back to where the story really began, because what happened next would eventually shock investigators. The story begins with something most people rarely think about: jet engines. At first glance, a jet engine doesn't look like much. It's just a large metal machine attached to an airplane wing. But inside that machine is some of the most complex engineering humanity has ever created. Temperatures inside a modern jet engine can reach more than 1,500 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than molten lava. The turbine blades spin at incredible speeds, sometimes faster than the speed of sound, and every single component must be engineered with microscopic precision. If even one tiny part fails, the entire engine can break apart in seconds. For decades, only a handful of countries had mastered this technology. The United States was one of them. American companies spent generations refining their designs. The knowledge required to build these engines became incredibly valuable, because whoever controls advanced jet engines controls the future of aviation. Military aircraft, commercial air travel, space technology, and that's where China enters the story. For years, China had been trying to develop its own advanced jet engines. The country had brilliant engineers and enormous industrial resources. But jet engines remained one of the hardest technologies to master. Developing them from scratch could take decades. And in a world where technological power determines global influence, decades can feel like an eternity. So China began looking for ways to close the gap faster, sometimes through research, sometimes through partnerships, and sometimes through intelligence operations. This global race for technology would eventually intersect with the life of one ordinary student, Chaoqun. Jai grew up in China during a time of enormous change. Cities were expanding, technology was advancing, opportunities were growing. Like many young students with a talent for science, Ji developed an interest in engineering. But not just any engineering. He loved aviation, aircraft, jet propulsion, aerodynamics. Eventually, that passion led him to one of the most prestigious engineering schools in China, the Beijing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics. This university is one of the country's top training grounds for aerospace engineers. Many graduates go on to work in China's aerospace industry or defense programs. Ji was a typical student there. He studied hard. He enjoyed technology. He joked with friends. People who knew him later described him as energetic and enthusiastic, sometimes even a little silly. He loved talking to people and making jokes. Nothing about him suggested the kind of quiet seriousness people often associate with intelligence work. But during his final year at the university, something unexpected happened. Ji attended a job fair. At first, the event looked like every other job fair. Corporate booths, recruiters, students searching for opportunities. But one booth stood out. It didn't advertise a company. Instead, the recruiter introduced himself simply as a professor representing a confidential government unit. The description was vague, very vague. The recruiter explained that the work involved serving the country, important responsibilities, sensitive information. For a young engineering student, the offer sounded intriguing, but it quickly became clear that this was not an ordinary job. The recruiter was connected to China's intelligence service, the Ministry of State Security. Often called the MSS, the MSS is responsible for foreign intelligence operations. Its mission includes collecting information that benefits China's national interests, and in recent years, one of its biggest priorities had been technology, especially aviation technology, jet engines, aircraft designs, advanced aerospace research. GI was exactly the kind of recruit they wanted. Young, technically skilled, and planning to travel overseas. The recruiters began building a relationship with him. They invited him to dinners. They praised his intelligence. They talked about the honor of serving the nation. For Ji, the attention felt exciting. The idea of being part of something important, something secret, something bigger than himself. Eventually, he agreed. Not long afterward, he traveled to the city of Nanjing. There, he received basic training. But it wasn't the kind of spy training people see in movies. There were no gadgets, no high-speed chases. Instead, the training focused on simple things. How to gather information, how to communicate carefully, how to identify individuals who might have access to valuable knowledge. His role would be small. But even small pieces of information can become valuable when collected over time. Soon after this training, Ji received the opportunity that made him truly useful. He was approved to study in the United States. In 2013, Ji arrived in Chicago. He enrolled at the Illinois Institute of Technology. From the outside, his life looked completely normal. He attended classes. He worked out at the gym. He played video games late at night. He made friends easily. Many people remembered him as cheerful and friendly. He joked a lot. He teased his friends about slang words they used. If someone asked how he was doing, he would sometimes laugh and say something silly like, "I'm Gucci." Nothing about him seemed suspicious, which is exactly why he blended in so easily. But behind that normal life was a secret connection to intelligence officers thousands of miles away. Eventually, they contacted him with his first assignment. The task sounded simple. Gather background information on several scientists working in the United States. Many of them were Chinese nationals employed by major aerospace companies. The goal was not to steal secrets directly, at least not yet. Instead, the goal was to identify potential targets, people who might later be persuaded to share knowledge. Ji logged on to commercial background check websites. These were public services anyone could access. He entered names, collected personal information, compiled reports. Then he sent those reports back to his handler in China. To disguise the message, he used an innocent email subject line: midterm exams. It seemed like a small task, but it was a clear sign that Ji had become part of an intelligence operation. And yet, while all of this was happening, Ji's personal life in America was changing in unexpected ways. During a road trip through Utah, Ji encountered something new: the Mormon Church. Something about the community appealed to him. The kindness, the structure, the sense of belonging. Within a short time, he decided to convert. He was baptized into the church. Friends remember how excited he was. He attended church events. He built strong friendships. To them, he seemed like a genuinely kind person, which makes the story even stranger. Because while G was building a new life in America, he was also quietly connected to a foreign intelligence network. Two completely different worlds, existing inside the same person. G loved life in the United States. He loved Chicago, the freedom, the culture, the opportunities. But there was a problem. His student visa would eventually expire. Once his studies ended, he would have to return to China, unless he found another way to stay. That's when he discovered something called the MAVNI program. Military accessions vital to the national interest. The program allowed non-citizens with valuable skills to join the US military. In return, they could receive accelerated citizenship. For Jai, this seemed like the perfect opportunity. He spoke fluent Mandarin, which made him valuable as a translator. So he joined the program. If everything went according to plan, he could become a US citizen and possibly gain access to sensitive military information. But far away from Chicago, something unexpected was about to happen. Ji's handler, a man named Xu Yanjun, was becoming increasingly aggressive in his efforts to gather aviation technology. Eventually, Xu arranged a meeting in Europe with someone he believed could provide valuable aerospace secrets. But the meeting was actually a trap. The person he contacted was cooperating with American authorities. In 2018, Xu traveled to Belgium, and he was arrested. For investigators, this was a major breakthrough, but they believed Xu might have a network of assets, including people inside the United States. One of those names was Chaoqun. So the FBI began planning an undercover operation. Back in Chicago, G had no idea he was under investigation. Until the morning, a red car appeared outside his apartment. The man who approached him claimed to be another intelligence officer. He said they needed to understand how Xu had been caught. G believed him. After all, intelligence networks often replace arrested handlers. They agreed to meet at a hotel room, but the man was actually an undercover FBI agent. Hidden microphones recorded everything. G spoke openly. He described his relationship with the Ministry of State Security. He explained the tasks he had completed. Then the agent handed him a document, a receipt, written in Mandarin. It described a payment from the Ministry of State Security for intelligence work. The agent asked G to sign it. G signed. Seconds later, the door burst open. FBI agents rushed into the room. The undercover officer pretended to be arrested as well. Then two agents sat down across from G. They asked him a simple question. "Do you speak English?" The operation was over. Chaoqun had been arrested. During the trial, prosecutors presented emails, documents, and recorded conversations. His defense argued that he was young and naive, that he had been manipulated, but the jury found him guilty on most charges. G was sentenced to 8 years in prison. His handler received 20 years, and the story left many people wondering something unsettling. G didn't look like a spy. He didn't act like one. He looked like a normal student, friendly, cheerful, curious about the world. But modern espionage rarely looks like the movies. There are no tuxedos, no dramatic car chases. Sometimes the people involved look completely ordinary, and that's what makes stories like this so unsettling. Because the next person involved in an intelligence operation might look just like anyone else. A classmate, a co-worker, a neighbor, someone you would never suspect. And that is the quiet reality of modern espionage.